And we're live, everybody. Welcome, everybody, to the final Brainfood Live of 2022. It is episode 186. I think we've done something like 49 Brainfood Lives this year, which is a kind of just a relentless campaign. I don't know how we've managed to do it. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in and listening in for the final time this year. And to be on this journey this year with us has been absolutely fantastic. So thank you for giving us one more hour of your day. It is me, I'm Hung Lee. It is Brainfood Live on Air. We're going to talk about the state of recruiting 2022 in review. So today is really going to be looking back on the year with a bit of reflection. We've got a wonderful list of experts that are going to come on and speak on their domain, their expertise, and just talk a little bit about what they think that segment of the market has been. I want to try and make this a little bit open mic as well, because there's no reason why we couldn't get anybody else on screen that has not been scheduled to do that. So if you've brushed your teeth and you've brushed your hair and you've got your camera on and you're decently dressed, Pedro, looking at you, then yeah, feel free to raise your hands and we'll bring you on to talk about your particular domain today. Anyway, let's do some basic sound checks because we should be okay on Crowdcast. I'm pretty confident you can hear us all, but let me know, everybody, if you're on Crowdcast, can you hear me? Let me know in the chat there. We should be broadcasting this multicasting into LinkedIn. So if you're following this on LinkedIn, if you're one of those enthusiasts that, logs into LinkedIn even on the last day of the last week of the year, then let me know on the comments below whether you can hear and see me okay. I can see myself, which seems to be okay. And we're also blasting this out on Twitter and Meta as well, the remaining bits of social media that are still hanging on in there. Will they survive into 2023? Who knows? But we're still going to be blasting out Brainfood Live on those places as well until such a time where it knocks us out. Okay, I think people can hear me okay. It seems fine. That's excellent. Folks, once again, I want to take a moment and thank our sponsors for Brainfood Live on Air. They come on every week and they kind of make sure that this show continues to go. Without the sponsorship, we won't be able to run it. I'm very happy to say 2023 is entirely sponsored out as well. So you can also be sure that we've got a full schedule of programming going forward for the next 12 months as well. This week, as it has been last couple of weeks, it is MetaView AI, one of my favorite companies, certainly one of my favorite categories, which is interview intelligence, interview analytics. I think at the start of this year, less than 1% market-wide adoption in terms of this category of technology. I fully expect by 12 months down the line, it's going to be something close to 10, 15% of companies using a technology of this type. That is recording and transcribing an interview and then making sure you derive intelligence from the information you've collected. That's going to help you improve the interview process. It's going to be great for interview training. It's going to help you de-bias interviewing. And from a corporate perspective, it will give you an overview as to how good a company you are at the task of interviewing. Imagine you're sitting on top of a business, 10,000 employees, maybe you got 150 hiring managers hiring away. Do you know whether they're any good at doing interviews? Well, with technologies like this, it can help you understand that, and therefore can help you up-level your entire capability of doing this critical task in the recruiting process. I think interview intelligence, interview analytics, which way you want to call it, will be a critical component, mandatory component for a lot of businesses in next year. But anyway, why do you want to listen to me talk about it? Because we have got the founder of MetaView. He's going to come on and give us a chat as well. If he's not wearing Christmas swagger of some type, I'll be very disappointed. Because I failed to find my Christmas hat earlier today. But I'm pretty confident that Sile is not going to disappoint. I expect a jumper. I expect, what am I seeing? In fact, I can't even see you, Sile. I can see you. Oh, yeah. You've emerged on screen, but for some reason I can't see you, man. Why is that?
Should be okay. Let me see. Let me save this now. 1 second.
Oh, there he is. He's back. And Sile, where's the hat? Where's the tinsel?
No, I couldn't. I thought about it in advance. I thought, okay, I could nip out and get one, but I didn't. So what can I say?
You're same as me. I was like scrambling around. Do I have a hat? I used to have a hat, but I don't have it anymore. So it's like I'm back to uniform, as I can see you are. This tells the world we're professional to the very end, mate. To the very end. Well, listen, Sal, great to see you, and thanks for dropping by. I know it's the last day of the year for you guys, so I'm sure you've got other things to do. But thank you for swinging by and telling us all about MetaView. Why don't you direct to the audience? Tell us why we should care about this.
Yeah, I feel like you did a phenomenal job of doing that for me. You like sort of stole all of my talking point time. So maybe, yeah, I think there's some things I can add to that. So as Hung mentioned, MetaView is an interview intelligence platform. What that means is we focus on helping you really explore the next frontier for high quality hiring, which is understanding what's happening in the sort of the biggest black box in your hiring process, which is your interviews. And with an understanding of what's happening in your interviews, there's a bunch that you can do. You can help your interviewers feel more confident about how to run an interview and how to evaluate candidates. You can help your hiring managers just have much better evidence at their fingertips when they're actually making those crucial decisions, especially if there's like an ambiguous decision, maybe where some folks think, hey, this candidate's great. Other folks are not so sure. Like, let's not just say no to that candidate because we couldn't get consensus. Let's actually go to the details. Or let's not just say yes to that candidate, even though we weren't sure because they've got a really strong resume, and sort of, you know, the sort of the cycle continues. And the other thing it does that's really great is it just saves people time. Like efficiency, quality and efficiency are really the name of the game. When you have your notes taken for you and you don't have to worry so much about writing up those really thorough notes into your ATS afterwards, frankly, it just gives you a bunch of your day back if you're a recruiter or an interviewer or anything in between. In terms of what that means for companies, we see organizations improve their offer acceptance rates by 16%. So, which in turn helps you speed up your time to hire as well by about 28%. Mileage varies, of course, but we've had some pretty exceptional results on that front. 90% user satisfaction rating. So a lot of folks will say, a lot of the time we get adopted by recruiting teams initially, and then they roll it out to the broader organization, the interviewers and the hiring managers within the company. And they're sort of, I guess, have top of mind, hey, are the interviewers and hiring managers going to appreciate this? Actually, it turns out 90% satisfaction with those interviewers and hiring managers. So that's 90% of our users say MetaView helps them feel more confident and comfortable about their interviewing. 5 stars on G2, and we just launched a free tier as well. So no excuse not to give us a go in 2023 and see what the fuss is about.
Free tier. The free is the favorite word for all brain fooders. So folks, if this is free to try, what do you get free? You get like certain minutes or something, or how does it work?
No, a certain number of users. So if you're a small organization, that could do you, maybe you won't even need to go beyond it, but up to 5 interviewers in the company. Once you go beyond that, then we have a conversation.
All right, I'm super excited. Why don't you just share the link to where you can get the free stuff in the chat there, Sile? Because I think, why not? Get into it, folks. If this is not cost, there's a lot of people here that are either recruiting solo or they're recruiting with small teams. Typically, the size of a TA team, I think, is generally going to be under 5 anyway. Overall, like in terms of number of instances you have.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why this couldn't be deployed to a lot of different companies just to educate them what this category is. Yeah, and then if it works, if it doesn't work, don't worry about it. It's not costing you anything. If it does work, then suddenly you've got these optimizations in place in terms of productivity. You could then talk about sort of spreading it to the hiring managers, et cetera, et cetera. Free is the favorite word. Stick it into the chat stream, man. And make sure people are aware.
Just to reiterate, Hung, I think you absolutely nailed it there. Like the reason we're doing this, obviously we're not a charity, but the reason we're doing it is because we appreciate that the recruiters themselves are the people who are going to advocate for this. And for you to advocate for it across the rest of the organization, you're really going to want to have touch and felt and smelt it yourself. And that's just a really great way to do that. So
yeah, that makes perfect sense. Okay, get on it, folks. Sire, listen, thank you so much for everything you're doing for the community and the wonderful product stuff that you're making. Let's make sure we're going to obviously be talking more into the new year anyway. But let me take the moment to thank you for everything you've done, and also to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I hope you take the time to take a break. I know you've got family stuff going on as well, so best of luck with all that, my friend. And let's catch up in the new year. Happy New Year to you. Happy holidays.
Thanks so much. Same back to you, and thanks for all your work, Hung, this year. I'm sure everyone super appreciates it. So yeah, thanks so much.
What a nice guy. Sayo Majos, man. Make sure you get in touch with him. Just connect with him anyway. He's a good person to follow on places like LinkedIn. And as he mentioned, I didn't even realize, but free tier for up to 5 people. Come on, get on with it. All right, let's get on with the show. We are going to be talking about review of the year. If you're not aware, by the way, I've been trying to write a review of the year on the Monday newsletter I'm writing this week in recruiting. So on Monday, on Boxing Day, there'll be a release of the final part. So I've done 3 parts of this, part 1, part 2, part 3, listing 20 things that have happened in recruitment this year, which I think you should be aware of. It's too late, obviously, to squeeze it into this conversation, but I'm hoping to cover some of these topics with you today with our guests. So if you've got any thoughts on things that you think have been significant in this year for your business or your segment or your region, do let us know in the chat and let us know whether we should talk about it a bit more. Anyway, without further ado, let's bring on our guests. By the way, our guests are going to be rotating in and out simply because of the number of guests we've got and also because of time zone. So I'm going to go firstly with our friends in the Netherlands. Look, I'm just going to bring you on by yourself to begin with. A reason why it'd be good to chat with you. But secondly, I'll be interested to know what it looks like on the continental side, particularly when it comes to things like recruitment, RPO and stuff like this, and how that year has been. So Dukke, I hope I've got your name right. There he is.
Dukke. Hi, Jong. How are you doing, man?
How do you pronounce it, man? This is like an alien name to people who speak English.
It's all good, my friend. Dukke, whatever. We'll get there. We'll get there. Don't worry about it.
Is it actually short for something? Is it a diminutive of a longer name, or is it?
No, it's actually not. No, it is sort of. If you go back into history, whatever, it's the name means wolf. So whatever, whatever you want to make of it, but I can't make of it anything else of it, I'm afraid.
No worries. That's very, very interesting. Because obviously, I don't think there's a UK equivalent. There's an English equivalent to this name, whereas sometimes in Dutch there's like an easy translation.
No, true. But I haven't met too many people in my life in the Netherlands who have the same name. But all good. I don't think that applies to you.
Well, to be honest with you, I think the Hungs out there's like millions of us.
That's what I'm saying.
Like I actually set up a group once on LinkedIn. A people called Hung, I think it was called.
Yeah.
It's just to try and like create a tribe of Hungs out there. To see, because we should have a group.
Yeah.
You know, you should stick up for each other. Yeah. And I think 3 people joined it.
I did try it once when I saw somebody else on LinkedIn with the same name who was in an interesting position to try it in my sales pitch. Hey, we both have the same name. Do you want to talk? He said, like, oh, what are you doing, man?
Dude,
get away.
Don't do this.
Didn't work. No, didn't work. No, didn't work. No. So, I tried nonetheless.
I think you have to do it in a joke manner. If you have a strange name, then do it in a joke manner, and then everyone might kind of have a laugh with you. And then who knows? I mean, because one thing that's interesting with BD is that if you randomize your BD, you'll actually uncover some opportunities. So in other words, BD is typically very, very targeted. Like it has to be this profile, this is all this in to make it accurate. But I think sometimes you take a moment and just do a random thing.
Yeah.
And then see what happens. And I think you'll uncover stuff that your forensic analysis would not have occurred. And it would actually, oh my God.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Best option.
Well, I mean, like in general, I think if you can't handle the word no in BD, then you need to find another game, right? So all good. Yeah.
There we go. And that's true for entrepreneurship as well, man.
Yes.
That's obviously been your journey. I think 5 years. Has it been this year for you and We Are King?
Very good. Yes, definitely. So yeah, the first jam will be sort of the 5. Yeah, that we've been in business 5 years. So a bit over 5 years ago, we went to the Chamber of Commerce to set up Keen. And I think 2-3 months before, but I think we had this conversation every time we were online, one way or another. Then I also reached out to you back then as well, right? To pitch the idea a bit, and here we are, man.
And I said, don't do it, man. Don't do it.
No, and that was the first no. No.
I think I endorsed you like soundly. But tell us about the year, man, because Keen are obviously doing lots of interesting things. You kind of train recruiters, you place recruiters into companies, you provide resourcing services. So I think from your side, you've got a reasonable barometer as to the demand of services. So if you look back on this year, 2000 January to now, how can you describe the journey in terms of user demand for your services this year?
Yeah. I was trying to prep this chat 2 minutes before we went live, obviously, but I think nonetheless, I think like everybody else in our industry, and I think more specifically in embedded and/or RPO, like we went flying into this year, obviously, right? Like the demand last 2 quarters, the year before was insane, and that continued into this year as well, where basically I had to sell no for a change, which is something I don't like doing, but that was just what happened on a weekly basis. Like people were calling us, companies were calling us, can you support us with your services? Either back to sourcing, recruitment, advisory work, everything basically, and that continued. Well into the first quarter, obviously, and then the terrible thing happened in Eastern Europe, right? That sort of set up the world and a lot of other things as well, I suppose, but also specifically towards our industry. That definitely sort of was the first mark on the wall. Okay, what's going to happen here? A lot of uncertainty in general, I suppose. That being said, the business still continued more or less untouched into the second quarter. But then in the second quarter, the first projects, the first companies, and really specifically in, like, if you look at our business and our portfolio of clients, so we have more the more traditional legacy, larger corporates, right? From on the one side, and the other one is of course fast scaling tech companies, startup scale ups, later stage companies, basically high growth companies, and they were of course affected because of the change in investment climate, right? So extended runways, hiring freezes, letting people go, whatever. So that definitely impacted our business. I do feel there's quite a big difference between cities. So we have offices in Amsterdam and Berlin. I do feel that Berlin got sort of affected a bit more. I'm not entirely sure what the data is behind it, but my best educated guess was that quite a bit of funding came from the US, and of course the US was hit a bit more than we were in general, I suppose, and that quite a bit of the funding dried up there. So quite a few of the larger project, later stage companies were finding it a hit difficult to pick up funding, basically. That was, at least to with my knowledge, my experience, to a lesser extent the case in Amsterdam, where of course we have teams deployed as well. Of course, there were some companies who say, okay, it might go a little bit different, but it seemed to be a little bit more, I don't know, relaxed. So let's say, okay, we'll continue the next quarter, Duke or Keen, but then afterwards we need to see it a little bit. And Berlin was midward like, okay, it's going to stop today. See you later, basically. So that was a bit the rundown, and then with us it flatlined a little bit across summertime, and then after summertime, I guess relatively similar to a lot of previous years, then I don't know, hiring managers or recruitment leaderships, so they think, oh my god, I still need to do quite a bit of hiring towards the end of the year. So then they picked up the phone again. So it stabilized more or less a little bit into the fourth quarter, but more in general, I mean, if you look at specifically the type of business that I run and our competition, of course, we've been affected 100%. And you do see, once we engage with, let's say, new projects, new clients or current clients, it's all the same thing, right? So before, like a 12-month contract, no worries. Unlimited changing of resources, whatever you want. The pricing, you want to go up, all good. And now all of those have been a bit under pressure, right? So shorter contracts, shorter termination periods, pressure on the pricing. If I enter a pitch right now, I usually enter a pitch like with 2-3 other companies, and if they have people on the bench / standby, you know what's going to happen. The prices go like this. So that was a little bit the end of the year. So it's normally end of, I don't know, halfway mid-October, I have a relatively good idea what's going to happen in January, February, March, the consecutive year. That was a bit different. So I was still doing negotiations yesterday evening, basically, and into the night. And I've had a few proposals out today as well. So yeah, just to give you a bit of a quick rundown, huh?
Wasn't that just an amazing rundown, folks? A round of applause for Duka there. You should be like a documentarian or something, because the breakdown there. I was just listening to you as I was saying, and I was just like visualizing a kind of some sort of line chart of demand. And I think you've nailed it absolutely. Like everyone charged into this year thinking, we just have to. The opportunity is massive. Let's grow. Let's keep blasting through. And then, of course, we had this horrific invasion, which really did reset the board, in my view. It completely changed people's attitudes. Yeah, obviously, 100%. There's issues much more important. But in terms of the global environment, I think suddenly everyone thought, right, the world that we thought we'd be moving into in January onwards, that's no longer there. And all of the growth plans, investment plans, and so on were based on this premise of this world being there. World's different. It's a much more less benevolent world, and suddenly, everyone's more defensive. Then we had this, the kind of the legacy of the early deals carried us through Q2.
Exactly.
Summer plus realization, big tech crunch and everything. That was like no bueno. And then a little bit of a spike, sort of Q3, and then we were kind of wondering where we're at in Q4. Going forward to 2023. But I think that everyone is probably in that same boat, Duka. I don't think any one bit of solace that I think all of us can kind of have is to say this is not unique to any particular company.
No,
everyone in the same boat, no matter how you apply to it.
No, totally agree. Like I did a round of sort of talking to my to my competitors / friends, right? So the ones in the UK and the ones in Berlin and the Nordics, etc. That I think exactly like you said, Hung, like just everybody's in exactly the same boat. And of course, if you have a larger workforce, then you might be hit a bit harder. If you have a few people, like 10% bench there is a bit different from them. There it is for me, obviously. So therefore, the impact for a lot of people has been a bit more significant as well. But I think we all went on the same premises, like super high growth coming out of Corona, unlimited free flowing cash. But nothing is for free in life, right? So I think that's one of the things that we've just had experienced altogether in the course of this year. That just doesn't exist, right? It just doesn't. And then there's a correction in the market, which up to a certain extent, I think is healthy, purely looking from a business perspective. But at the same time, it impacts so many people across the board that, of course, is a really tough to deal with. At the same time, I have to say as well that, like with our business and the growth that we experienced in the course of the last 2 years, it was quite centered, focused on, let's say, the technology companies and the technology scene, right, where a lot of cash was floating around basically, and everybody thought that they were betting on the next big thing, more or less. But of course, there are different pockets in industries and countries where there is still a crazy demand for people, but then we just need to be flexible a little bit in terms of, like, can we redirect our resources? Can we make sure that we support other companies as well than just the coolest, sexiest company in town who just became a unicorn, basically?
Well, here's the thing, Duka, and I think one positive, I always try to look at positive, not what the situation, but I think positive we might see is that if we're redirecting investment away from, these super growth unicorns and stuff like this, which ultimately are just like luxury services, really. And now we're perhaps moving it towards things like green energy. We're moving it towards, material sciences. We're moving to things that actually might have more significant impact. It could be that we're redirecting finance and people and talent towards fundamentally more productive industries rather than ones that were just kind of floating on top of, the latest gadget or whatever it might be. So that's one thing I think is
totally agree. It's actually quite funny that what you just mentioned, because the 3 new larger projects that we picked up later this year were actually in. I'm always struggling. Is it clean tech? Is it climate tech? Is it renewables? I don't know. But anyway, they're in the clean segment basically, which I think is amazing and which works for us, and which I don't know, and also in terms from employer branding perspective for us, right? And our internal people, of course, are really keen and eager to jump on board with those type of companies as well, and it just makes more sense from a lot of different viewpoints basically.
And the final point on this, Duka, before I let you go, but this kind of switch away from the big tech unicorns, typically US-based VC-backed type businesses, I think will always be attractive, but it's obviously been hammered from a branding point of view. Crypto has been hammered from a branding point of view. And now you see maybe the redirection into clean tech and biosciences, material sciences and stuff like this, space tech. And it could be that those become the new cool. And from a supplier point of view, whether you're a recruitment agent, embedded recruiter supplier, or you're delivering services somewhere, maybe that's where candidates may want to go. So there's a big flip in terms of,
Yeah, totally agree. No, I totally agree. I think it's interesting to see, and I think just like as long as you sort of diversify your portfolio, it's going to be just fine, right? And just to make sure, the work that we're doing, if you can add value on the left, you can also add value on the right. That's something I think that we are already doing basically. So in that sense, we're feel quite positive and with an ease of mind going into the next year. But it is definitely a bit different from last year, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, perfect. Before I let you go, Duka, 2 questions.
Yeah.
something? Was that? Did you need to do something?
No, I want to suggest one thing to drop the. We all know here in the community probably our dear friend from Ukraine, Andrew. He's running an amazing setup there, right?
Stesenko.
Yeah, exactly. And he's running amazing, of course, outfit in the Ukraine, trying to support people as best as he can. So I wanted to suggest to drop his donate link in the comments to make sure that everybody feels free to donate and give a bit away for their Christmas spirit.
Why didn't you grab that link, Duka, and share it into the chat stream there? For folks who don't know, this is a guy called Andriy Stesenko, good friend of a lot of ours. And he, of course, is sharing the burden with his countrymen in Ukraine. And he's essentially become a kind of a delivery driver for humanitarian assistance. So please make sure you support his GoFundMe. That's been ongoing. It's actually been one of the things Brainfood's been supporting also. And basically, because I know Andrew as well, that's a very trustworthy guy. So make sure
he's amazing.
If you got anything you want to give, then stick it over there.
Cool.
I haven't asked Andrew this, but I didn't know whether he'd want to do it. But I'm going to try and get him on Brainfood Live next year if he's up for it.
Yeah, we did a session with them to support his fellow agency entrepreneurs to see if they could switch from a traditional model towards an RPO model. But I'll let you be. I'll leave you be. But you had 2 questions, or?
You have totally dominated the time, which is okay.
Sorry,
but no, it's okay, man. One thing you've learned this year that you think, okay, I didn't know before 2022, that you can say, okay, that's a learning for me. And the second question is, what's the best thing that's happened to you this year, man?
Wowee. Those are big questions to handle in a short amount of time. Well, I was actually intrigued with the guy that was just here before with MetaView and the tooling that he had. So really make it really small, short and simple, basically. I've actually been playing around with a similar tooling as well. And I think in the course of the last 5 years, I've always played around with tools and tips and tricks and things you can integrate left and right. And in one way or another, I'm usually a bit disappointed to the actual impact that people say, oh, it's going to change recruitment forever, basically. But I actually think this thing is actually really, really, really useful, really interesting to deep dive into, basically. So that's one of the things I've been trying to play around with, and also with my teams, etc. as well. And the best thing that happened to me this year, well, I think building the team, sticking with the team, getting through this bumpy year, it's really helped us grow as a company and as a person and as an entrepreneur / leader. And super grateful to be hanging around with each and every single one of them.
Yeah, fantastic stuff. Duka, thank you so much for your contribution. We'll get you back next year. I'm going to basically be over to the Netherlands hopefully soon.
Oh, please do. Please do.
Then we'll be sure to catch up, man.
All right. Thanks, man. All the best. Thanks, Hang, and take care. All the good.
Take care. Okay, bye-bye. Great. Isn't he good? He's great. Duka Giertzma. Let me just actually share his LinkedIn here. I usually do this, but I forget sometimes. Let me just... share this through. Oh yeah, and Ali, you're absolutely correct. Duka's been really good in terms of like sharing, like growing recruiters, like getting new people who outside of the industry stepping in and then training them up. I think making new recruiters being a big deal. Okay, let's bring on another good friend of ours from the Netherlands. This is Bas van der Hattard. I actually, don't really know how to pronounce that Bas's second name. So let's just stick with Bas. Let's hope he can come on. He's going to give us a bit of chat. There he is. Bas, you've actually changed location. Is that the new color scheme in your wall? That looks awesome, dude.
It's been here. When you were here, it was already on here.
Not this color, man.
Definitely.
Seriously?
This color has been in here since I moved in. This was actually one of the first. Well, the only thing which changed is that there's actually now a picture on there where you were part of at the Sydney Harbour Bridge.
Perfect.
It's the only thing I've changed.
That's great. Well, listen, Bas, great to see you. I mean, for the folks who don't know who you are, can you quickly introduce yourself, who you are, what it is you do?
Bas van der Hattard, and I organize events here in the Netherlands for recruiters, and I consult with companies on improving their talent acquisition.
Indeed. Basically. So And there he is. I've shared the link into his LinkedIn there, folks. So make sure you connect with Bas. Bas, you're also one of these people that there's a couple of things I want to talk to you about your reflections on 2022, because you've got expertise in these number of things. But let's talk about one thing that I think you're quite well known for, which is assessments and examining the state of assessments. And I'm talking here, folks, about whether it's psychometrics, whether it's like, video, whether it's whatever it might be, the concept of let's figure out whether this person is good for the job or not. How would you characterize 2022 for this? Has there been any major shifts or changes or trends in the assessment space that you can say, you know what, that's an interesting thing to keep an eye on?
Yeah, actually there have been, but they're complete opposites of each other. So I've seen a certain group of people becoming really enthusiastic because of the labor market shortages, really seeing like, okay, maybe we should drop the college degree and actually measure what is necessary for the job. And there are these amazing case studies. And I've also seen the complete and total opposite, especially with companies who bought the wrong tests. And this could either be they bought tests from a provider that they should have never bought tests from, or the provider is good, just not for what they were looking for. And of course, the last group is never blaming themselves for being a dumbass buyer and buying the wrong test. Of course, then all assessments are bad. I've heard multiple people say all assessments are racist because they have rejected everybody who has a bicultural background, which is perfectly, if you knew what you were buying, you knew that was going to happen. I've seen two sides really develop strongly. On the one hand, the acceptance of, hey, maybe the resume shouldn't be the first thing in there. Maybe we should be looking at skills. And I've actually also seen, which is really interesting, the complete and total drop of everything, basically open hiring. I've seen several really nice case studies. And when I'm talking to some of my clients, and I literally had this conversation like a few months ago from one of the companies where I'm like, okay, we're hiring garbage men here. Why would we need a resume? Can you please tell me what you check for on the resume to see if somebody is potentially a good garbage man? And actually nobody objected when I said, why don't we just, I don't know, give him the job or have everybody come in for a short interview or and everybody's like, yeah.
Well, a couple of things there, Bas, and I think there's a few things that I agree with you 100%, which is there is an acceptance on the dropping of academic criteria. I would say 12, 18 months or so ago, it would still be quite an exceptional thing to say, oh, this company has got rid of degree, whatever. Now it's like, yeah, of course. And in fact, lots of companies are now doing this. So the recognition that academic criteria doesn't map necessarily to job performance, I think is now becoming more widely accepted. And you can anticipate, if trends go on, that it may become unusual for academic degree qualifications that aren't related to the job itself to retain to become a criteria. Like I would say maybe 12, 18 months down the line, even further from this, it might be strange to see degree required for a job that, you know, it's not related topically to this kind of function. So there's a clear trend there. Also, you can understand that the assessments have become more widely adopted. I think through the movement and shift to remote has kind of given obviously assessments a big boost, because no longer could you do just the face-to-face interview process and accept that was the case. So I think that's been a massive amplifier into the requirement to get more different types of information.
I haven't seen it, to be honest. I have not seen the link. No, I haven't seen the link with remote, to be honest. And I've actually been talking to a lot of companies like, shouldn't we be looking for, can somebody, for example, work remote? You know, can we test if somebody's psychologically acceptable to work from home, because it takes certain things. And everybody's like, cool, do you have a test for that? I'm like, no, but we should be looking into that. I've actually talked to all the test providers, but there aren't that many people currently talking about it. It's mainly the labor market shortages, like, okay, we can't find them the way we were doing. Let's look at talent in a different way.
Yeah, you're correct. It's not so much the remote; it's the desperation to hire people that's pushed this in. But you make also a very interesting additional point, which is who is testing for remote compatibility, so to speak. It might even still, the conversation may not have actually matured to the point where we're able to have this conversation, because the prevailing presumption has been that anybody can do remote equally well. Therefore, we should all go remote. I mean, that seems to be still where we're at with the conversation. However, it is pretty clear that certain people have certain contexts internally and externally that makes them more or less suitable for this style of working. And we're not testing for it per se. Maybe that's the next tranche of assessment tooling that will evolve to start testing for what is the optimal mode for this person. Although I can understand candidates might be quite reluctant to accept the verdict on that. It's not easily adoptable, even though you can see it's valuable. Okay, we're going to move on because you've got lots of things to talk about, Bas. You're also big on events also. You've attended events, you spoke with events, you've held your own events. I think 2022 obviously has been the year when basically people have done events again after a break of 2 years or so. How is your perception of the event space in 2022, and how do you anticipate it being in 2023?
Well, in 2022, for the first time in the 17 years I've been hosting events, I actually had to cancel one because there was just no attendance, which was, interestingly enough, an event on selection. And everybody was like, oh, we can't find anybody, so we're not even thinking about selection, so we're not showing up to any selection event. That was a big bummer. I find that basically people are, on the one hand, very eager to go. On the other hand, much more picky. It's very interesting. I
can totally see that.
And my other event actually had the biggest attendance ever.
Let me just go back to the other thing. I think the pickiness of the event selection is important, because it probably makes, if everyone's distributed or they're remote or whatever, suddenly you're trading in your day at home compared to being at the office, which, if we're honest, folks, if we had an event, we could actually, is actually an office day, we could sort of say, yeah, that's work. But these days, if we're working from home, comfort our own home, etc., doing our own stuff, sitting in your pajamas, you're thinking, man, can I really be bothered putting on a pair of pants to go to this event? So in other words, our selection has gone up. Therefore, I presume from event providers, you need to upgrade the experience. You need to make sure it's better and delivers against what, to reward that person for turning up.
Yeah, and there actually we see a very interesting contradiction. What I've noticed is that people love the choice and lots of speakers and a mass. And then so I had this massive event. I had more speakers than ever on my big event in October, and all the feedback was it was too much. And I've actually noticed that people are unable to do. A lot of people have said to me, a full day is kind of hard to keep focused. And we need more breaks. So it's really interesting that our tolerance for information and the stimulants that comes with that has gone down over the pandemic.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So would you anticipate events becoming shorter, half-day events maybe, or what's your feeling?
I don't know if they will become shorter, because then they won't sell, because it's too few speakers. So I'm not going to travel and give my day away from home for only a few people. I do expect we'll have more breaks, more networking, and I'm actually experimenting in 2023 with my 2 events. One will have longer sessions, but less. So
longer than an hour, you mean?
No, longer than 20 minutes.
Right. Okay.
So I never do sessions above 20 minutes, because in the Netherlands, if it's a bad session and it's 30 minutes, people are like, oh, this guy is slow. But and the other one are going to be 30-minute sessions, and I'm going to see if I can figure out, is it worth having longer but less sessions, to check, what is the new normal. And we were going down in time at least here in the Netherlands.
It's difficult to say. It's so difficult to say. One thing I think is true is that events are definitely back. And that's there was a possibility, by the way, folks, that it wasn't going to happen again. So it's great that they're back. And great that people like you are still in the game, because I know it must be very, very difficult when you're running like an events business, or at least partially events business, and then there's 2 years where you couldn't do it. I mean, I totally get it. So well done you keeping in the game and providing these events for us, because folks like you decide not to do it, then I don't see anybody stepping up necessarily and naturally taking on this thankless task. So this is great that that's still happening. Fantastic stuff. Okay, Bas, let's move on. Final 2 questions to you also, as I mentioned, with Dukker. The one first thing, like, what did you learn this year that you didn't know before and you think actually important lesson? And the second is what is the best thing that happened achievement-wise, or whatever it might be, for you this year?
My learning is actually very much related to assessments. I found out that if you were not educated, so your primary school education in what's called the Latin script, which basically we use in the West, but so if you've been educated in Mandarin or in Khmer or in Arabic, that a lot of our tests actually, especially tests which you have to find inductive and deductive reasoning with numbers and with letters, are actually more difficult for you because you didn't grow up in that language. And I was talking to a lot of scientists, like, why didn't you guys ever tell me this? And all of them were like, that makes so much sense, and we've never actually researched it, which actually gives a new form of diversity checks we need to do. It's not just we have to check when we are validating assessments on, Hung, who has a Chinese heritage, is scoring equally to what he should be scoring to Bas. We actually have to check somebody who learned to speak, whose first education years were in Chinese, and so we're finding out that there are more categories of diversity than we've ever thought of checking for.
I think that's really, really interesting. The concept of, and by the way, the linguistic aspect of it is definitely true. There's lots of like really deep realities behind the script that you're writing in. It influences how you think and all the rest of it. Yeah. And just as a little aside, very interestingly enough, it seems that, for instance, what we think is oftentimes a universal issue, like, for instance, dyslexia is considered to be a universal issue. But I've always wondered, does dyslexia actually manifest in logographic languages? Because dyslexia is about the placement of Latin letters into a certain order and the failure necessarily to see that properly and accurately. And that's where you can't read. And it turns out that actually in logographic languages, meaning everything's a picture, people may have the condition, but it doesn't actually manifest because that's not what they're reading. That's not what you're asking that person to do. So when that realization came about, I thought, whoa, that's huge. That means that we really do need to pay attention to what the script does in terms of how we think and all the rest of it. So yeah, fascinating.
No, absolutely. It's actually, I recently learned that it actually might, even within different Latin manifests, might be different. So
100%. You look at the accents and stuff like this, like it's more complicated. I mean, if you look at, forget a language that has massive, like Czech, I think has like 7 different accents, or Nordic languages have loads of different letters even. I mean, that's got to make it more difficult, surely. It's just the number of letters.
And if I can just reference what I said about buying the wrong tools, very often it's the language issue, which everybody says it's completely validated and it will work on everybody, and we've validated this, but then they're using academically validated tests on academic persons, for example, for security guards, and that went completely haywire. So it's not just the language itself, it's also the level of the language. If you're testing, for example, on, I don't know, security guards or other type of high volume jobs, where people come in and barely speak the language, but they speak it enough to be employed. That's very often where I've seen in the last year assessments go completely bad.
And just as another aside on that, there's been some like almost real-time language translations, which I don't know whether everyone saw the Meta, sort of Mark Zuckerberg having a conversation with this person in Hokkien, which is a type of Chinese language. And he was speaking English, his interlocutor was speaking Hokkien, and the thing was literally translating it close to real time. And you wonder if that's the case, then maybe assessments need to kind of be conducted in native language. And then because you've got the translation tool that can literally do this. So, okay, listen, final thing before you go, Bas, the best thing that happened this year, what was that?
No doubt, the 3 weeks in Australia and the events we did there, the people we met there, whom, for me, getting out to Australia, meeting those people there, making so many new friends, learning about the Australian recruitment community, which is just so much more close-knit than anything I've seen in the UK or the Netherlands, people supporting each other. Without a doubt, that's the best thing that happened to me.
Fantastic. Hopefully we'll get the chance to do that again soon, my friend. Okay, Bas, listen, thanks for doing everything you're doing for the community. Obviously we'll be in touch before Christmas or New Year or whatever, but we'll certainly be reconnecting 2023. Thank you so much for your time. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to you, man.
Same to you, mate.
Bas van der Hattard, make sure you connect with him. Good dude. Okay, we're going to roll on. It's going to be Joanne Lockwood, I believe. Joanne, are you still there? I think so. I haven't spoken to Joanne for a bit. And I think Joanne's actually got a new haircut that she's going to show us. In which case, I'm quite excited. Quite excited, Joe. Look at this. I'm going to be wowed because Joe's got like a proper studio set up and it's going to look amazing. Okay. Joe, are you there? Maybe. Yep. Oh, there she is. There she is. How are you doing?
I'm good.
And in fact, it does look fabulous. Talk us through the hairstyle. That's definitely different. And it's, well, I don't know whether it's because you're wearing a tiara as well, but the color's different. Very nice, Joe. Very nice indeed. Well, listen, wonderful to see you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us, Joe. And yeah, for the folks who don't know you, actually, why don't you introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Yeah, thanks, Hong. It's an absolute pleasure to be back on Brainfood Live. My name is Joanne Lockwood. My pronouns are she and her. I describe myself as an inclusion and belonging specialist. So I work with organisations throughout the UK, Europe, elsewhere, working with people to promote positive people experiences and cultures where people can thrive. So that's across TA, HR, D&I, OD, all those kind of areas. Just really getting engaged, and there's sometimes tough conversations and nudge people in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And Debbie, I totally agree. Joe's the only person to date that has even made a single gesture towards the Christmas spirit. So shame on you, Sile, myself, Bas, and Ducker for failing to do anything whatsoever. So well done, Joe, for bringing in some glitter for us. Joe, you're an expert in as you say, inclusion. Given sort of, I'm not sure whether it's even possible to look at trends or to think about sort of where the state of it is, but would you mind giving us your view as to what things have happened in 2022 that you think is significant, or kind of trend wise, where are we when it comes down to things like diversity and inclusion? I guess UK to begin with, but maybe you can also speak globally as well.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously live in this echo chamber of everything I see on LinkedIn, and my feed is kind of D&I biased and focused, and I'm seeing a lot of people talking about it, as I would. I'm still seeing people talk about the same things we talked about 2 years ago, 3 years ago. I'm still seeing many Black, brown people of color still frustrated at the lack of progress. I'm still seeing women talking about the lack of progress in terms of gender parity in the workplace. We look at the World Economic Forum. We're now quoting 150 years before gender parity in the world. So I don't see the world of work having nailed EDI at all. It's performative. We're talking about it. And yeah, the memories of Black Lives Matter, the memories of what we were doing about well-being with COVID, when we're all in this storm together in different boats, we were talking about well-being, and we were prioritizing it. And we've got the likes of Twitter, Tesla, SpaceX, Musk and co, Facebook, other big tech corps still pumping out this mantra of having to be back into the workplace. We go back to the old mantra. We can't trust people to be efficient at home. We need them back in the room.
So that's actually a really important point, Joe. So what you're saying is there is a kind of a connection between the place of work and the acceptance of difference, because we know actually if you give people choice in terms of where the location is, actually that improves inclusion, obviously, because there's some people that can't come in or have additional challenges to do so. And I'm not just talking about physical mobility, but of course that's a huge component. There's loads of people that physically couldn't do it and have been locked out of the workforce. Now hopefully this gives opportunity, but we also need to talk about primary care responsibilities, which falls overwhelmingly on women, for instance. So you kind of, it's like a little bit of a backward step, would you say?
It's the generalization that one size fits all. Well, the answer is we must go back to the office, and that's what frustrates me. We need better collaboration. We need better way of onboarding people and knowledge transfer. We need better way of mentoring and accelerating people's careers. And the equation is equals back in the office. What I'm saying is that there needs to be more thought put into a person-centric approach about what works best for that person. And you're right, it's not just about having a disability. It's not just around caring responsibilities. It's not about being neurodiverse. We know that some people do work better when they're surrounded by people, when they want that buzz. But unfortunately, the world of work tends to be dominated by extroverts and sociopaths. So they're not often looking, well, it is. Statistics show that most senior leaders are sociopaths or extroverts or a mixture of the two. So
yep,
there's not compassion going on, is there?
No, I agree. I mean, I do wonder. You've made the point in a very succinct and I think also humorous way, Joe. But it's a very serious point. I mean, it could well be that business leaders, how has someone like Musk achieved success, for instance? And there's obviously tendencies of authoritarian approach. I mean, that's clear. And even you look at people like Bezos was similar. People were terrified of Steve Jobs. I mean, you don't have to be that type of person, but clearly you can, and it does work. So maybe the way in which we reward behaviors needs to be examined. How do people become successful? Is there something we could examine there? So
yeah,
go ahead.
Well,
Joe.
I'm a great believer that organizations should be having EQ, emotional intelligence, compassion, empathy, humility, vulnerability as core attributes. And yes, I know that when we're looking at board of directors, we want inspire shareholders and investment. We need that stereotypical hard-nosed business person. But maybe further down the tree, we actually need the world of work to be more friendly, more open, more compassionate, more humility. I think if we can start breeding our junior and middle managers to be a more inclusive leader to start with, to bring that compassion in, we're going to see better engagement, and the quiet quitting may be prevented.
Do you think that's happening though? Because if you look at the egregious examples of back to office and macho kind of behavior, they are of the older generation. I don't see like many 25 to 35-year-old leaders behaving in that way. So perhaps this is like a last reaction of that era of leadership. I don't know, folks. What do you think?
I think maybe what's happened is that the older millennials have been kind of bought into this world where, as you say, this macho style command and control leadership has been prevalent. But we're seeing the younger millennials, the Gen Zs, looking for more flexibility, more freedom. I mean, I know you did a talk the other year about the artisan employee, where we want people to be more creative, so more self-starting. The world of work is changing. We're not all task-based. We are looking for people in many organizations now to show a level of self-thinking and self-management and more agile working. So I think if we're not careful, what we end up doing is we'll try and be forcing a generation who are looking for that flexibility and freedom into a box that is old school. And I think if you're looking at workforce planning for the next 10 years, we need to be seeing how we can embrace the younger generation and their ideas.
And you know what, Joe? I think you're correct. There's a risk, but also I think there's going to be quite significant geographical divergence on terms of how this operates, because a great deal of this comes down to things like workers' rights and the relationship you have with employers and so on. And you know, we're going to bring on some of our US friends in a second, but I would say that the reason why, like for instance, a lot of the stuff that Musk was doing would not be doable in the EU or even in the UK, which has inherited a lot of the EU structures. That you can't do that. Whereas in the US, I think default is still at will, right? So in other words, the boss can actually fire you, no reasons given, and you're gone. So I think that there'll be the legislative environment will create divergences in terms of how powerful bosses are, and that's going to be very, very interesting in a world that theoretically where the job could be done elsewhere. Is this an opportunity for European companies, for instance, to pick off great talent because they can offer more sort of flexibility? I don't know.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not criticizing Musk for making tough decisions. Yeah, losing 4 million US a day you have to make some tough decisions, or you're not going to be there next week and no one's going to have a job. So tough decisions need to be made. It's just the compassion and care you make those and how you make people feel as a result. So you end up alienating not only your entire workforce, but a good proportion of your customer base. And you know, the brand becomes less attractive to revenue in the future.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, you know, looking back on the entire episode, it'd be fascinating to examine the psychology of it. But it seems to be predominantly destructive, which was maybe the purpose. So, but anyway, let's not get sidetracked on Elon. Because
but one of the key things about EDI, if you're looking at the business case, I know we don't always talk about the business case in EDI. One of those is brand values and allegiance to your product. So EDI must be aligned with who you are, your core brand values. So that's the, if you like, the Elon sort of like takeaway is if you're trying to establish a brand, and brand goes into, you know, we've talked about environmental issues, sustainability, all the other things we're talking about at the moment in the world. That's all part of our brand value, which is part of our talent attraction. So we've got to make sure we're creating this alignment. You know, this magic of belonging. You want to work and be associated with a company that meets your values. And if your values are sustainability and your company is not doing that, it doesn't matter how included you are, you won't feel alignment.
And you know what, you'd even extend that to, you know, certainly in the B2C type environment, also to the user community, because as a lot of people have left Twitter, for instance, because they felt such a disalignment with the management, with the new management, that they actually couldn't participate in the thing anymore. So it extends beyond just the employee base, but also on people who might use it or in business partnerships or whatever it might be. So very, very interesting. Joe, I've just noticed the time. We're flying through this. So let me just ask you the same two questions I asked the previous guest. What's the one thing that you've learned this year that you think, okay, that I didn't know before, and you will kind of as a lesson you're going to take going forward? And what's the best thing that's happened to you this year, 2022?
Wow, that's a lot of questions. I mean, let's go backwards. Best thing that's happened to me is I've maintained a sustainable business, largely online, largely remotely. There's been very little demand for me to travel, which I think also aligns with global values around sustainability and minimizing our impact on the planet. And I see that trend going into 2023. There's still a large requirement for online delivery, and I'm more than happy with that. Yes, it'd be nice to go and see Andrew again down in Australia in Melbourne, but I don't feel any FOMO from that. So so for me, maintaining a business online has been really fantastic. What's changed really? It's the same old. You know, in my world, I'm still having the same conversations. I predict I'll be having the same conversations in 2023. There's a lot of, we want to be more inclusive. We want to be doing all these right things, but the reality is, often there's a disconnect, and it's companies maintaining that. And I've seen organisations actually go backwards, where they've had a change of leadership. They've been bought out. They've merged. We've got world recessions at the moment. We've got economic crisis. And when that happens, we hunker down on revenue and bottom line. And some of the nice stuff, the EDI stuff, it just goes out the window. So I think 2023, we're going to be hunkering down, and EDI is going to be taking a backseat. Investment's going to be cut. Training's going to be cut. all the lunch and learns we were doing, all the awareness we're doing, all the employee well-being, we're going to see a constriction on that. So that's the sad thing, I think, in 2023, unless the economy start moving again.
Yeah, that's really appreciate that kind of foresight, Joe. Even though it may not be like the most sort of a positive thing, it's a realistic assessment of things. I think actually TA also can be nested a little bit within this. Like we like to think that we're critical to this, that, the other. Yes, we are in growth eras, but when it's actually constrained and there's businesses are crunching down, we're going to be the first to go. That's just the facts. So yeah, we need to do a lot of work. Joe, I'm sure you're going to be there and doing your bit and more for the community. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. Let me take the moment to wish you and yours a very Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, Joe. And hopefully we'll get the chance, even though we are a kind of remote first, hopefully we'll get the chance to meet up face to face again in 2023. I hope at some event that we're gonna both be at. So great to see you, Joe, and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you. See everyone.
Great. Isn't Joe amazing? Joe Lockwood, folks, wonderful person. Please do connect with her. Folks, by the way, I know that sort of now we're kind of well over time, but we've still got Irina Shamaeva to come on. We've still got Sarah Ali to come on. Take a moment now, by the way, to take your LinkedIn and share it into the chat stream. I know there's only like 30 people watching this right now on the Crowdcast, maybe 30 again on LinkedIn. But if a few of you connect with more people than you did before the show started, then ever the better. 2023 is not going to be any less chaotic or any less unpredictable than it has been in 2022 or indeed the year before. I think all of us will benefit simply from having stronger networks. So everyone who's paying attention to this on the 23rd of December, your people that care about recruitment, care about people, care about organizations, they're folks that you should be connecting with. So take a moment. Take your LinkedIn profile URL, stick it in the chat stream on Crowdcast, and put it in a comment on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook, or wherever you're watching it. And then make sure you're connecting with everyone else who has done the same. Minimum value you get out of this, you walk away with 10, 15, 20 extra connections that you can know and have a conversation with going forward. Okay, let's move on real quick. I appreciate time is sort of pressing, so we're going to bring on Irina Shamaeva. Sarah, I want to bring you on right at the very end. Irina, of course, I'm sure you know her already. I'll wait until Irina is on screen. She can introduce herself, as is the form. Irina, let me just grab her URL. If she's there, that is. Oh, there she is. Hey, Irina, how are you? Hi, Irina. Can you hear me? No? Oh, we can't hear or see you, I'm afraid to say. So audio out on Irina. I wonder whether this may be a Bluetooth thing or something. I don't know. Maybe the mic's off. I'm going to share Irina's LinkedIn here. So make sure you connect with Irina, by the way. If you don't know Irina, she is like number one person doing sourcing, I think, or at least communicating and sharing revelations about the world of sourcing to the world. And hi, Irina. Are we any good? No, you're still mute here. Why am I doing that? Let me just toggle you off. Irina, we can't actually hear you. Do you want to try and we need to invent a sign language for when it goes mute. No good. Are you going to plug something in? I think she's going to plug something in. The miracle is going to happen, folks. As soon as it goes wired, that's when we're going to be resolved. Hello? No? Irina, no good. I think, do you want to try and like log off and come back in again or something? I don't know whether we should just do that old stuff and see whether that works or not. Okay, whilst we're fiddling with the tech, folks, one thing I wanted to, isn't it muted by the app? It could be, I didn't do it though. Thank you, Kaya. One thing I think, I'll speak on Irina's behalf, by the way. Hello, Irina.
Hello.
Oh, we had you for a moment, for a brief moment. We had crystal clear tones of Irina's voice, and then she disappeared. So I think there was a possible exit there. Hey, this is live streaming, folks. This stuff happens, and all part all part of the fun. Irina, you're not though. You're off screen. I can't see you. Okay, listen, Irina, what I'm going to do is make sure we're going to try and invite you back at some point, I guess. But right now, I think you're off screen. I'm going to try and bring in Sarah Ali. Stay with us, Irina. We're going to bring you back at some point when we can pull you back. But yeah, we definitely need to figure to get your voice back here, Irina. By the way, not the first time, 7. And there's Sarah. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Can you hear me and see me?
Yes, we can hear and see you well. How are you doing? I heard it's like a winter storm in the US at the moment everywhere. It's like, is it really cold?
I'm in New York right now at the corporate office. The Statue of Liberty is behind me. There's a bunch of people waiting for the ferry. So good times.
Yeah, it looks cold. I'm not sure if it is.
45 degrees Fahrenheit. Convert that to Celsius.
So that's like 10 degrees. That's not too bad, is it? That's like 10 degrees.
It's going to get worse, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'd not say I hope it get worse, but I'm hearing about, snowstorm. So yeah, let's see some snow, Okay. Listen, Sarah, for the people who don't know you, can you quickly introduce yourself? Who are you? What it is you do?
Sure. I'm the global economist at Radency. Radency is a global talent tech firm that helps companies solve their hiring challenges. That's what we do.
Indeed. And I love to see companies like Radency start to have roles like this. And we're starting to see this happen more. I think the more companies of this type of scale start recruiting economists, the better, because we're really big fans of the data. And in fact, Sarah, your sort of content is featured on Brainfood multiple times this year because of the no, I appreciate the input. So given your sort of perspective, can you run us through 2022 in terms of just the labor market? How have you seen it as pertains to what is happening and where do you think it's going to be?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak a little bit from the US, but also from the global perspective. We have, by the way, countries or offices in 9 other countries like Canada, the UK, France, Germany, Netherlands, Singapore, India, Brazil, but US is the headquarters. But long story short, tight labor market, we still have high level of job openings, right? That's one issue. The biggest issue, I think, honestly, is people are not in the labor force, right? And there's all these issues as to why they're not in the labor force. We're seeing declining labor force participation rates across the world. It's not just the US, right? And it's the long-term COVID, it's the retirement, it's the caregiving, it's the cost of gas going up and then getting to their location. People keep asking me in the US, clients, hey, are we ever going to go back to 2019? I don't think that's going to happen. And that's not to be a negative person. It's just, this is a new shift in the way the labor market's acting. And I think companies, right, that are agile, that can recruit people from other talent pools, they're going to be the winners, I think, in this market. That's how I'm looking at it.
Right. So 2022 has basically been the year of like missing workers, the labor force participation. Exactly. And in fact, this is the labor market paradox that we were wondering about really since 2021, I think, where we thought, we've lost however many millions of people were made redundant on the first wave of pandemic and lockdown. The anticipation was, these people be desperate to come back. And we found actually that they weren't coming back. And lots of reasons why not. People didn't want to do the types of jobs that would be either physically expose them to things like COVID. COVID's a big deal. And, if you're suddenly doing a job where you're interfacing with human beings again, you've got to recalculate whether you want to do this. And I think sectorally, the hardest places to recruit are actually those types of work where it is in person, there's no flexibility, number one, but there's also proximity to other people. And, do you really want to do that job anymore?
Absolutely. And Hung, to your point, like retail industry, for example, like we have retail clients that, they're having a challenge, right? Finding people to come into those brick and mortar stores. Everybody's shopping online, obviously, or nobody wants to be there in person. If I can find a job that pays $15 to $18 an hour and I can stay at home, why would I go inside of a store, right? And be that sales associate? I mean, it's all about cost benefits, right? Everybody's an economist. We're all making decisions on the margins, right? Cost benefits constantly.
100%. And I love that sort of term. Everyone is an economist. And that
Absolutely. Is what empower yourself.
But that's actually the basis what economists do, the entire discipline is based on the idea that human beings do cost benefit analysis. And even though we might have over-egged the rational man thesis, the reality is it's very hard to get someone to do something that they don't think is in their interests.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's like if you have a remote job that offering you similar or better There's very little incentive to do it. And in fact, increased cost of living, of course, that's something that's borne by the worker. If you're driving a car, you need to drive to a certain place. Any increase per mile in terms of how much that costs, that's taking it off your pay. You're not getting increase in wage in order to do that job. So suddenly it makes less sense for you to do that thing again because it bleeds down your cash.
Exactly. And then the other points I'll make really quickly is that, globally speaking, there's higher unemployment rates for like all the countries. In the US, it's not as bad, but we still have like a 4.1% projection for 2023. But here's the thing though, right? These central banks, they're increasing their interest rates, right? To, get everything down, with respect to inflation, we'll have higher unemployment. But here's the silver lining. The people that are unemployed are the people that don't have a job, but are actively looking for a job. So you in talent acquisition, you who are a recruiter, those are the people that you can go to fill the vacancies. That's the silver lining. Here's the negative part. The people not in the labor force. Like I looked at last month's BLS for the United States. We have 100.2 million Americans not in the labor force. That has gone up by a lot. And this is just continuing to beg the question, like, what can we do to get these people to come back, right? Do we give them transit subsidies? Do we help them with caregiving? Is it issues with mental health? I think your prior guest, I loved her comments. I think a lot of the data that I look at, people on LinkedIn, Twitter, it's like, companies haven't moved forward enough. Actions speak louder than words. You can say a lot of stuff, right? But if you're not doing it, then maybe why would I work for you, right? Why are you the employer of choice? So people are really thinking about those factors.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And I think as a society, we need to examine this. Like if people don't actually want to do work for pay, but if they don't see the benefit of doing so, we need to fundamentally re-examine it. And I agree there's certain things that, the stick approach, the forcing of people to come back. It's like, okay, what is that going to produce? You're going to produce demotivated people that resent having to do this. That's going to lead to all kinds of social manifestations down the track that society will have to deal with, So can there be a better way? Is it the responsibility of companies to find that way? Is it the responsibility of the state to do more or less? All of these things, I think, then translate into these political conflicts and cultural conflicts that we then see as well. In terms of the sort of actually two questions for you. In fact, we're going to get to the two questions in a moment, Sarah. But before we do that, let's have a think about sort of where you think it's going to be in 2023. I know we should do projections later. Maybe there's a show on that, by the way, on the 6th of January. But just to preempt it a little bit. But how do you see the Fed rate rises? Are they going to continue in this way? I know they've risen, but not as high as anticipated. Are we seeing the end of these rate raises or what?
I think in the US, at least, I'll speak for the US because I know that market the best. I think the rates will go up a little bit more. Again, we're at 7.1% annualized inflation for the US. They have a 2% target. But, I think it's going to eventually stop maybe like March, April. I mean, I think it has to, that whole soft landing, I really don't buy it. Maybe I'm a little pessimistic today, sorry. But I feel like it's going to be a little hard. That's just my take, at least for the US.
Yeah, I think so. And by the way, the US is obviously super relevant because basically we, especially as the US, basically a lot of companies have their debt, have their transactions denominated obviously in USD. Therefore, it makes a difference if that becomes if the rates go higher. It's no surprise everyone else is sticking rates up also, and therefore all of that inflationary pressure cascades around across the planet. I think in the UK, obviously, I'm not sure there's like many countries quite in a stranger situation as the UK, because we've got multiple issues going on. Loads of strike actions, for instance, is also occurring. This is, of course, because of inflation and people are not being paid enough. But then you pay people enough, and then the argument is that just increases inflation. So we're in a we're in a bit of a doom loop. So very interesting it is. Okay, Sarah, we've got to move on real quick. Give us the answers to two questions. Number one, what is the thing that really has you've learned lesson-wise this year? And what is the thing that has been the best thing that's happened for you this year?
For number one, I think for me as an economist, I think it's been a humbling year. For me, I love learning information, but I think as an economist, some of our models are flawed. I will not pretend that we were right about COVID and the projections and so forth. But I think it's interesting that I've learned so much more about different data sources, but also how to leverage qualitative data in my storytelling. I'm a big quant person, as you know, Hung, but it's like, okay, there's more to the story, right? There's more to those numbers. There's people, there's context. So that's been fun for me. And then for me, in terms of what I've done, that's been the most interesting, I think, traveling the world this past year, got to meet you as well in London. But for me, the highlight was Mexico. I went there for a Bikram yoga retreat. So I don't know if any of your viewers or listeners do Bikram yoga, the old school, 26 postures, 105 degrees. So I got to do that in Mexico. It was one of my bucket list items. And I now want to do yoga certification as a hobby. So that's outside of economics.
Well, see, there we go. That's what we want to hear about great achievements. So Sarah, it was a pleasure to meet you as well, and hopefully we'll get the chance to do that next year. Thank you so much for everything you're doing and your massive contributions to the industry. I guess hopefully we'll be in touch, and hopefully we'll catch up next year.
Absolutely.
So happy holidays to you. Hope you have a good break, and a very happy new year. And we'll see you next year, Sarah.
Thank you so much. Take care, hon. Bye-bye.
Okay, wasn't she great? Dr. Sarah Ali, make sure you follow her. Okay, Irina, I'd love to bring you back, but I realize the time, we're well over time. People are away, they need to go and see their family. I have actually got to get on a train, so I've got to leave myself as well. So anyway, listen, folks, thank you so much for watching Brainfood Live on Air. Thank you so much for listening to it. I know a lot of people listen to this on podcast. We'll be back next year. We're going to give it a week's break because we're not going to do anything New Year. Next show is going to be January the 6th. That is when we are going to be talking about the forecasting 2023. What is going to happen in the world of recruitment? Again, a bunch of amazing guests to come on. Irina, absolutely. We'll bring you on for the forecast maybe. Well, I think you're on holiday. I don't know. 6th of January. That's when we're doing it. So let's do it then. Let me leave the final moment to say happy holidays to everyone. Hope you have an opportunity to take a break. If you have family and you enjoy spending time with them, I hope you have a very good time with those folks. If you have other plans, I hope that they're going to go great as well. Thank you for everyone for supporting Brainfood, and we'll see you in 2023. Thanks for watching, folks.